Obama-appointed Illinois judge ruling that illegal immigrants can own a firearm and carry a firearm. The judge saying that a federal prohibition on illegal migrants owning firearms is unconstitutional when applied to a non-citizen who has never been convicted of a violent crime. This is incredible, Adam. To me, this seems like insanity.
Police arrested an illegal immigrant living in Chicago with a gun back in 2020. They charged him for violating the federal law banning illegal immigrants from having guns. It's been on the books for a long time. Judge Sharon Johnson Coleman just decided the Second Amendment applies to him, the illegal immigrant, like everybody else, so he can have a gun. In her decision, she wrote that Humberto Flores received and used the handgun solely for self-protection and protection of property during a time of documented civil unrest in the spring of 2020, the summer of love. Court documents show Flores fired the gun at moving cars during the BLM riots in Chicago. He argues police officers warned him about looters who were approaching his neighborhood. Key to this ruling is that the judge says Flores' conduct heavily impacted her decision. He had no criminal record and was not considered a risk to public safety. This case is just one of many challenging that federal statute that prevents illegal immigrants from possessing a firearm. There are cases unfolding in states nationwide. Shan Wu is here, former federal prosecutor, turned criminal defense attorney, once a very senior officer at the DOJ. Good to see you. Should I be shocked that an Obama appointee found a gun control law that she didn't like?
No, but I think it's very fascinating that this whole push towards expanding the deference to the Second Amendment in some ways has kind of come full circle here, where something that really seems counterintuitive, the idea that someone who's not here legally still has that right, and you can't use this particular statute, which is commonly known as the felon in possession statute. But the way it's written, she really zeroed in on the language. He's not a felon.
So what? You're not a American citizen.
And the gray area, of course, is whether or not his status, and frankly, I think the way he was using the gun calls a little bit into question, you know, how peaceful he is.
No, I mean, I guess the question, though, is what constitutional rights and protections then become absolute, right? Because illegal immigrants are still counted in a census. That is a huge deal in terms of representation. But then where do we get to right to work, or right to vote, or right to have a license to practice medicine, or right to have a license to do all of these other things? Isn't this opening Pandora's box?
It could be. I do think, I hate to say this, but I think Congress would have to be a little bit more powerful here, because there's no question that the Constitution applies to people who are not here legally. They're, quote, persons under the Constitution, so that makes perfect sense. The problem here is you need to draw the statute more narrowly, and you might have to actually specify that being here in a non-legal status would also make you not eligible to carry the firearm.
Back behind bars tonight, an undocumented immigrant convicted of rape who illegally tried to re-enter the country. Take a look at your screen here. This is Jose Lara from Mexico.
From police, they say that they arrested a 32-year-old woman who's believed to be the driver, and two men ages 17 and 23. Police say they are from Chile.
Sheriff Richard Jones is speaking about a 15-year-old from Honduras who he says was living in a sponsor's home in Middletown. Jones says the girl's sponsor is living in the U.S. illegally, and that the sponsor's boyfriend is this man, Isario Garcia Cruz. Garcia Cruz is an undocumented Mexican citizen, according to the Bedford County Sheriff's Office. The 43-year-old Garcia Cruz is now accused of being in a relationship with that 15-year-old girl.
A massive human trafficking sting that was dubbed Operation March Sadness. A record 288 people arrested, including suspected illegal immigrants.
Hands behind your back. Investigators say that suspect, who's in the country illegally, admits to taking part in an organized robbery of more than $1 million in jewelry.
So it's a really quiet neighborhood. It's very peaceful.
She's one of many surprised after the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office arrested these three men. Spokesperson for the Sheriff's Office says all three are undocumented immigrants from Guatemala. They face various charges, but the Sheriff's Office says they forced a woman into a car, then committed sexual battery on her at two different locations before the woman escaped, then flagged a passerby nearby for help.
Tonight, a migrant has been charged with raping a 15-year-old disabled girl at a Rockland hotel.
A 15-year-old wanted for opening fire on police officers in a crowded Times Square and shooting a tourist in the leg with a .45 caliber handgun. Police say the teenage migrant recently arrived in New York from Venezuela in September.
The New York Police Department has released body camera footage of the attack on 2 officers by a group of migrants in Times Square.
Officers found her body in the woods behind a popular running trail. The following day, police arrested 26-year-old Jose Ibarra. U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement says Ibarra, a Venezuelan citizen, unlawfully entered the country near El Paso, Texas in September 2022. He was detained and then released by Border Protection. In September 2023, ICE says Ibarra was arrested in New York City for allegedly endangering a child.
Obama-appointed Illinois judge ruling that illegal immigrants can own a firearm and carry a firearm.
What could possibly go wrong?
When the census is done and the census captures all of the people living in a certain region, if there are more people in Democrat-run sanctuary cities, then they'll get more congressional seats. So the congressional Democrats are actually winning on all of this when it comes to the census. Whether or not these people are going to be allowed in some way, shape, or form to vote is another question. But there's a lot of people who expect that is the reason they're doing this.
It's looking very likely, yeah. I didn't want to believe it, but it's looking very likely.
It sure is.
The U.S. Supreme Court says Texas can enforce its border law, allowing local and state police to arrest people on suspicion they crossed the border illegally.
Well, the on-again, off-again Texas border security law is off again for now after a wild day in the courts.
Following the developments in this story could give you whiplash. In the space of 36 hours, Senate Bill 4 was blocked from taking effect. Then the stay was lifted for just several hours. Now the controversial law is on hold again. Late last night, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals issued an order that prevents SB 4 from taking effect. The law would give Texas law enforcement officers the authority to arrest anyone they suspect of crossing into the United States illegally. Hours before the order from the 5th Circuit, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed the strict new immigration law to take effect. The nation's highest court didn't address whether the Texas law is constitutional. The justices then sent the measure back to the appellate court, and they issued the ruling late last night. The Biden administration and immigrant rights groups are suing Texas over the law, saying it violates the Constitution and will lead to racial profiling.
Couy Griffin is an Otero County, New Mexico commissioner and founder of Cowboys for Trump. And according to court documents, he intended to come back to D.C. this week to put an American flag on Speaker Nancy Pelosi's desk.
That I'm going back.
During a January 14th Otero County, New Mexico Commission meeting, Couy Griffin told fellow commissioners about his time in D.C. on January 6th and his plans to return to the nation's capital, this time with guns.
I've got a .357 that I've got in the trunk of my car, and I've got a .357 single action revolver that I'll have underneath the front seat on my right side. And I will embrace my Second Amendment. I will keep my right to bear arms.
According to court documents, Griffin hoped a change in leadership could be accomplished without a single shot being fired, but noted there's no option that's off the table for the sake of freedom. During Griffin's first trip to the Capitol this month, he told fellow Otero County commissioners he was invited by Women for America First to be a speaker and didn't come to D.C. to riot, rather support the president he felt should have won his second term. But court documents and Griffin at that commission hearing say he ended up on the west side of the Capitol near the inaugural stage.
And I found a bullhorn, and I was able to get thousands of people's attention down below me, and I was able to lead them in prayer.
Court documents show Griffin and a fellow Cowboys for Trump member left the Capitol when they smelled pepper spray.
The Supreme Court declined to review a ruling that removed an Otero County, New Mexico official from office over the Capitol attack. Otero County is just to the northeast of El Paso and encompasses Alamogordo. The appeal to the high court came from convicted January 6th Capitol rioter and former Otero County Commissioner Couy Griffin. Griffin, who founded the group Cowboys for Trump, was removed from office in 2022 for actions on January 6th. He was the first elected official kicked out of office under the 14th Amendment's insurrection ban. The Supreme Court's move means the ruling barring Griffin from office will stand.
we